the prime movers for extending your wrist. Now, you can get specifics down, but most of your extensors originate from your lateral epicondyle. Some come slightly above, like the supracondylar ridge, but the lateral epicondyle is like the main area, and they come down, and you have a brevis and a longus. The longus goes from your lateral epicondyle, and it travels the longest. It goes all the way across your forearm, and it inserts on the base of the second metacarpal. Whereas your brevis comes down, crosses over, but it inserts on the base of your third metacarpal. It does not have to travel as far. And then your extensor carpi ulnaris comes down and inserts on the base of your fifth metacarpal. Now that's, I'm just throwing that out there. You can look that up and stuff. They all extend the wrist. But what we want to do as therapists is we want to know how can we isolate them? How can we see, one is more involved than the other? So the way that we do that is for the brevis and longus, we have to position the elbow a certain way to isolate because the extensor, think of the name, extensor carpi, so it extends the wrist, radialis, okay, so it extends and radially deviates, longus and brevis. So they both extend and radially deviate. So how do we differentiate the two? The way we differentiate them is how we position our elbow. If it's the brevis, which remember the brevis means shorter, it's a shorter muscle, we put the elbow in a shortened position. If it's the extensor carpi radialis longus, we put it in a long position. And that will sort of isolate those two muscles. So for Kim, I'm going to start with the brevis, and I'm going to just ask her to stand up if you would right up next to it, and I'm going to bring her elbow in so that her elbow's in a flexed position. You can't really see it here, so you'll have to see it from this position here. I'm just going to bring it back. It should really come back into a flexed position, and let me just... So what I do is when I stabilize on the volar side. I don't want to stabilize on the dorsal side because stabilizing on the dorsal side, I'll be over top of the muscle belly. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to interfere with those muscles that may be already weak. If I were muscle testing her, I would be right in front of her, and I would be doing it like this. But I'm going to just come here for now. And all I'm going to ask him to do is to take, and if you would, with her elbow in the flexed position, in a more shortened position, I'm going to have her bring her wrist up towards the ceiling and towards her thumb. So she extends and she radially deviates. And that would be considered fair. I'm stabilizing her forearm so she doesn't flex. Go ahead, bring it up, Kim, and over towards your thumb. That's fair. Now, for good and normal, I'm going to have her go back up to her end range position. Go all the way up. I want you to hold it there. I'm going to apply my resistance on the dorsum of her hand, okay? Not over her fingers, but over the dorsum of her hand. And I'm going to apply pressure into pushing her into flexion and ulnar deviation, just the opposite of what she's holding. So I'm going to tell her to hold it, hold it, hold it. She's going to hold her hand and wrist in extension and radial deviation. So bring it up, Kim. Hold it there. Don't let me push you down. When I try to push her down, I'm going to push her in the opposite direction. I'm going to push her towards flexion and ulnar deviation. And she's going to try to hold extension and radial deviation, which is what the muscle does. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Okay? That would be for good or normal. For poor, I'm going to just take and place her hand on the side, and I would have her hand resting on the table. It would be resting on the table. I don't know if you can do that, Ken. I'm going to still stabilize the forearm on the volar side. All I'm going to ask him to do now is she's just going to extend her wrist. She's not going to radially deviate. You can't isolate when you do poor. So I want her to bring her wrist back, and that would be for poor. Again, one more time, Kim. All I'm going to do is put her forearm in neutral so that she's in a gravity lesson position. I stabilize on the volar forearm, and And all I'm gonna ask her to do is extend her wrist. Relax her fingers as she does it, and that's considered 4. Now, this is all for the extensor carpi radialis brevis. I want to test the extensor carpi radialis longus, and then we'll practice palpating the tendons on our own wrists.